Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. What I'm going to talk about today came to me while I was lying on the floor at the hall that I go to for ecstatic dance once a month. And I was lying on the floor listening to a beautiful little sound bath that was happening around me at the end of the dance. And this is something we always do. We dance for an hour and a half, two and a half hours actually. And then we lie on the floor and two people do a beautiful little sound bath. And I was completely relaxed and thoughts were just flowing gently through my mind. I could feel the energy in my body. I could feel my breath. It was a lovely experience. And something just drifted into my mind, and it was an image of a circle, and the circle was divided into 4 quarters with a line down the center and a line across the center. And this circle was representing different phases in terms of primary emphasis for a human being. And I was thinking about it in relation to myself. And the first phase, the words came through with it. And the first phase, which was actually the top right-hand quarter of the circle, was about asking and opening. And so this was about being in a time of asking for learning, asking for wisdom, asking for help, asking for information, asking for adventure, asking for fun, whatever it is, that state of needing something, having an interest in something, asking for it, and opening being the other half of that, which is then being open to receiving. And I recognize that there are times in my life when that's my primary emphasis, particularly when I was much younger. I was asking for knowledge, wisdom, answers, clarity. And I was asking more or less clearly or in more or less confused fashion. And I was open to whatever extent I was open. Of course, sometimes a problem occurs when we are asking, but we're not quite sure what we're asking for, or we are sure what we're asking for, but we don't really want to ask for it. We feel self-conscious, we feel confused, we feel ashamed perhaps, or guilty about asking for what we need. And there are times as well when we do ask, and yet we're not really open, we're not fully open to receiving. We're not fully putting ourselves in the right state, the frame to receive whatever it is that we've asked for coming towards us. Because, of course, when we ask for what we need, we don't really know where it's going to come from. We might think we know where it's going to come from. We might ask a particular person or a particular organization or a particular institution or book or course for the thing that we're looking for. Or we may just throw that asking out into the universe and say, look, I would really like an answer to how I can have a better relationship with my health and well-being. Or I'd really like more insight into how I can be more creative, or whatever it might be. Sometimes the asking is specific and specific to a particular source that we're asking for that from. Other times it's more open in terms of where we're sending out that asking. And the opening is the other side. Because without the opening, we don't receive whatever comes back. And this sometimes happens to some people, which is where there's lots and lots of asking, but no opening. And so They never actually find out whether or not they're being offered what they asked for because they're not open to receive it. They don't notice it and they don't take it in. So that's a particular phase. I've recognized that, particularly in my youth, that was a large part of what was happening there. But actually, these different phases, there may be phases across a life, or they may be phases over a much shorter time period, like even an hour. You may be in a meeting with somebody or having a conversation with a friend, and you may actually cycle through these different phases, through all of them in one conversation. Or you may cycle through these in relationship to a particular project or a particular modality or ideology or aspect or piece of life or piece of work. So the second one, which is the bottom right-hand quarter, is about receiving and learning. So you notice I mentioned the word receiving in the top right-hand corner, which is about asking and opening. Really, that first segment is about the state of asking and opening. The second segment is about the actual receiving and the actual learning. So I'm noticed in my mind, I was drawing a distinction between opening and receiving. So being in an open state in the absence of something obviously being there to be received is the trick, I think, in the first segment. In the second segment, we've been open for long enough for things to start to come towards us. And in the second segment, it's all about, can we actually receive? Can we take it in? Can we allow it in through our senses into the body, into the mind, into the heart? So again, even if we're really open, and then things start come towards us, if we at that point then go, okay, I've been open for a while and things are coming towards me, but actually I don't want to let them in. I don't want to let them penetrate within my self and within my experience. That's another way of turning away from the gifts. So this second segment is about receiving. And when we fully receive, we cannot help but learn. So it's about receiving and learning. And that's a different mode from the asking and opening mode, although sometimes these phases do overlap. The third one, which is the bottom left-hand segment, is about integrating and consolidating. So this is when we have received, we have learned, and we now integrate that learning into every part of ourselves, and we integrate it into our lives and into our behaviors and our patterns and our rhythms and our cycles, and they fully integrate within us. So they're no longer separate from us. They're no longer something new that we're receiving and learning. They're something we have received, we have learned, we've integrated it within us, and it's become part of us. And consolidating is about, consolidate means to make more solid, to make solid. So consolidation is when we, through our different frames of mind, through our energy, through our actions, our behaviors, through what we say, what we do, we actually empower and strengthen that integration that's occurred. And that's where often it can actually transmute into something more. This is the place where sometimes we discover that we are giving birth to something new, something interesting is coming to be within us. There's an alchemy occurring within us that is a result of the integration and a result of the consolidating, both of which are a result of the receiving and learning, both of which are a result of the asking and the opening. And the final segment, the top left-hand segment, is about giving and teaching. And this is when our embodiment and our presence actually conveys something positive and contributive to others around us and possibly to the world in general. And this is where we may actively be teaching, facilitating, maybe holding space for others to learn for themselves. And this is a phase where our prime focus is on the transmission of that which has taken root and consolidated and transmuted within us. And that's an outflow. So the asking and opening is an inflow. The receiving and learning is an inflow and an inner world process. the integrating and consolidating our inner world process and starting to move towards the outer world process in the consolidation, and the giving and teaching are entirely outward focused. So this image with these words came to me within the space of about maybe a minute and a half lying on the floor. And then, funnily enough, we were all sitting in circle after that, after the dance. And we were sharing and telling people about things that we're doing. And I mentioned the podcast. And somebody across the other side of the circle said, "Oh, yes, I listened to your episode about such and such the other day. I really enjoyed it." And someone else piped up and said, "Catherine, how many episodes are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing 2 a week, 1 solo and 1 with guests." And they said, "How do you think of a different topic for your solo episodes every single week?" And I said, "Well, I just thought up a topic, or a topic just arrived in my head while we were lying on the floor just now. So that may not have happened if it wasn't for being in this group, and if it wasn't for the beautiful soundbar that was being conducted." And suddenly the group realized that they had actually helped me to come up with an idea through their presence and through dancing with me that evening and through being in the space together in a state of openness and receiving. And it was a lovely closing of the loop. It was a lovely moment of recognizing that there's always some new idea flowing around, and if we're in the right space, we can perhaps receive it. And that we can, through our presence and through our actions, we can support other people to receive that which they needed to receive in that moment, which supports them then to transmit and convey it to others. So if you like the sound of that little model that I've just described to you, you might like to draw a circle and draw a line down the center and draw another line across the center. So you have 4 segments, and the top right-hand segment is asking and opening. The bottom right-hand segment is receiving and learning. The bottom left-hand segment is integrating and consolidating. And the top left-hand segment is giving and teaching. So thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful week, whichever phase you're in, or whichever phases you flow through during the course of the week. And I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.